All right. Welcome everyone to new edition of Polaron Connects webinar series. Today we're gonna talk about multilingual glossary of terms. And let me just introduce you to our panelists and presenters today. My name is Andrea Montilla. By the way, I'm a marketing and communications officer here at Polaron, and I'm really happy to present today's webinar. So let me just quickly show you the presenters today. So let me introduce you to Marie. Marie recently joined Polaron as a business unit manager, and she is going to be the first one presenting today. So she has a lot of experience in the translation industry and localization project management, and she's also a translator in the English-French language. Also, we are having Agata. Agata has been working for Polaron from December 2018, and she's a mechanical engineer, but also project coordinator here in Polaron. And we also having Travis. Travis has a lot of expertise in digital media and technology, and he's working in Polaron as a project coordinator and technical support from March last year. And also we have Gabriela. Gabriela is one of our translators from Spanish. Thank you, Gabriela, for joining us today as our guest speaker. She has a lot of experience in the translation industry, and she's been collaborating with us for the last 16 years or so. So continuing with our presentation, we're also wanted to talk about very briefly about Polaron. Most of you already know about us. We are an international social enterprise, is what we like to call ourselves. And we do translations, but also community engagement. And we are a team of 1,500 NATI certified translators and interpreters, and also in-house linguistic MPMs. We are working in Australia, but also in Europe and US since 2000, and working in partnership with clients and also diverse communities to deliver multilingual projects. About what we do, so we do a lot of things, including community-approved translations, but also consultations, focus groups. We work with plain and easy English resources, and also we have introduced multimedia production very successfully, including subtitling, voiceovers, animation, etc. We also work with linguistic asset management and interpreting, including face-to-face video and in conference as well. And now I'm going to hand it over to Marie, who is going to talk about glossary of terms. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Andrea. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to virtually meet you for the first time. So yes, before talking about why we should have a glossary, we should define it. So what's a glossary? Well, it's a list of terms, right, that are either specific to a client or an industry, that are contextual. They belong to a specific context, right? For your client, for example. They are terms that require some clarifications because they can be used in a meaning that is different from the usual meaning. And also, of course, they have their matching translations. So the glossary is actually the source of truth. That means that they should contain the official translation, and it takes precedence over other translations or even your translation memory if you use this. The glossary is really the basis of terminology management, and the terms in such a glossary can be stored in term bases that you can create, edit, and search. I will let Agata talk to you later on about the benefits of terminology management and more specifically glossaries. So now about the best practices when it comes to glossaries. Your glossaries, as I was saying, should be specific to an industry at the very least, or even better, if they are specific to a company or a brand. Because later on you will be able to use multiple glossaries in the same project if you need to. Now, when it comes down to content of your glossaries, it's about the key terminology that has been identified with such for such clients. So you should find there the frequently used terms, or terms that are specific to the company, as I was saying, terms that have a meaning different from the usual understanding. But they should also contain non-translatable terms. They can be product names, acronyms, and things like this. But the glossary is more than this. It's a great idea to add to your glossary the definition of this term, what it means, but also what it doesn't mean. You can add history. What I call history is that you can list deprecated terms or even forbidden terms that are no longer used for this project. And also, what I strongly recommend is having comments on top of your definition to give some context. Why should this term not be translated? Why are we deciding that this translation is acceptable or not? What is the preferred translation? Anything specific to a language. And then you can go down to being more language specific in your comments. For example, a French translator may decide that a term should remain in English, while a Japanese translator may choose to translate it because it suits the Japanese culture better, or something like capitalization. In English, there's a lot of capitalizations in the word that we use, and which is not necessarily relevant in other languages. It's important to remember that building glossaries is a teamwork. It's of course the translators as the experts in the translate terminology, but the terminology should be co-designed with the company you build this glossary for. And finally, as a pro tip, I'd like to say be thorough and be committed. It can be arduous sometimes, but it's really worth it. Your glossary should be checked and updated regularly to remain relevant. And you don't be shy to add new terminology, to remove obsolete ones, to amend your definitions or your translations. It's a never-ending process. So yeah, so you can amend it forever. But luckily, there are tools that can help you achieve this goal. And I'm going to let Agatha talk to you about one of those existing tools.
Thank you, Mari. So first, I will tell you why it's worth to create glossaries and manage terminology. So it allows you to reuse information. So you're spending less time on searching for correct terms or doing research. It increases quality of translated resources, and the chances for errors are minimalized. And because you have the context provided for each term, so your translation will be accurate. And because you're keeping the consistency, the information is easier to understand for the target audience. As a consequence, you're saving time, even that you need to make a bit extra effort at the beginning to create a glossary. There are statistics saying that you can increase your efficiency, saving up to 40% of time. And let me tell you more about a tool that will help you create a glossary. So can we go to the next slide? So Multiterm is a software to create, store, and manage terms. It's fully compatible with Trados, but it's a separate software. Good news, both programs working with the same license. So you may actually wonder what is the difference between glossary and a term base, as glossary seems just like a smaller part of it. So term base contains all terms that you're keeping for all your projects, and glossary allows you to distinguish between specific topics, products, and keep consistency for all of your clients. So what is the first step when we're creating a glossary? It will be the same if you're using Multiterm or other tools. So you need to identify the terms that you want to include in your glossary. How to do it? As Mary mentioned, glossary includes words and short expressions with a meaning specific for the company, customer, or product. Those will be words and short expressions with a specific meaning, like technical terms, legal terms, names of products, slogans, labels on user interfaces, brand-specific terminology, acronyms, abbreviation, and all other unique terminology that occurs frequently. Again, glossary can include also terms that should remain in English. So, for example, if we're translating for McDonald's, there is no need to include in your glossary terms like fries, chips, or burgers. But it's a good idea to include the name of Happy Meal because it's very specific for this brand. And in Multiterm, you can associate the term with the definition and context, like subject, image, example of use, all other guidelines. When you have already the terms identified and described, you can start your work. Often the client will provide you terms with context, so you can entirely focus on your translation of the terms. And in this point, it's worth to mention a few features of Multiterm. Can we go to the next slide? So working files can be used by multiple translators, proofreaders, and content creators at the same time, and this will definitely make our life easier as everything is kept in one place. You can also convert and import existing terminology automatically, for example, from Excel. And last step when you're creating a glossary, but very important one, is to maintain it. Creating a glossary is a work in progress. Fortunately, a term base in Multiterm is searchable, so you can easily navigate throughout the resources. And as I already mentioned, glossary can be used by CAT software, so you can automatically apply, edit, or add terminology in one environment. Tool Active Term Recognition will identify the glossary terms and will give you the suggestions. So that's about the theory, and Mari will show you now how it looks like in practice.
Yeah, thank you very much, Agata. So yes, I would like to show you how this works in real life. I just want to clarify that today we are choosing to show you Multiterm as a terminology management tool. We're choosing this one because our last webinar was about STL Studio and that Multiterm fully integrates with it. But there are many other tools that exist and that you may be familiar with or prefer. It's all personal preferences. But yeah, we just wanted to give a real life example using Multiterm today. So for Multiterm, today I'm not going to show you the interface, but if you would like a demo with concrete examples from project we completed, this is something we can organize in the future. Feel free to drop a comment in the chat section for this. So you can create term bases in different ways, right? And so for today, as I say, I'm going to focus on Multiterm. And as explained by Agata just before, Multiterm is a terminology management software that is fully integrated with Studio. And it's super easy to create your first term base in Multiterm, just following the instructions from the term base wizard. So it has 5 steps in there, right? What you do from the wizard, you can just build your term base from scratch or choose a predefined template, such as a multilingual glossary, which is personally what I would recommend. Then you just give your term base a friendly name, a description. You set up the languages you want in your term base. If you use the multilingual template, you will have German, English, and French by default, but then you can add as many languages as you wish, or you can even add them later on in the process. So that you just select some descriptive fields to add to your term base, like the subject or definition, note, status. It's fully, you can fully customize them. So it's very easily done. And then you can just remove, add, edit. And that's pretty much it, right? From there, you can start populating your term base by adding entries in all the languages you defined, or you can complete certain language and some others later. And when you're populating your entry, this is where you can add more details and put some notes or the definition or some synonyms or whatever you predefined when you were creating your term base. The entry is then automatically saved in your term list, and that's it. Just remember, as we mentioned already a couple of times, that it's crucial to keep your term base up to date, to check it and to edit it on a very regular basis. And now I would like to show you how does this integrate with Studio. If we could please go to the next slide. How do you use the term base in Studio? So when you're in a Studio environment, you can absolutely use the term base you created from Multiterm. When I say term base, we can say glossary, it's fine. If it's less confusing, it's just exactly the same thing. So for this, I'm going to do a live demo for you, and during which I will present some key features such as active terminology recognition, term-based viewer, term recognition, and term-based search. The idea is just to show you how the translation for those terms are automatically suggested, how easy it is to insert them in your translation, and how quickly also you can update your term base directly from Studio. Just please be aware that the term base you're going to see today might look a bit odd here and there. It has duplicated entries, etc. It's only because it's been built for a demo purpose, so please don't worry about it. So let me share my screen with you now. So here we are. We are in the editor view in SDL Studio, right? And so for now, we're just going to assume that your term base or multiple term bases have been added to your translation package. I'm not going to go into details about setting up Toretto Studio today, right? But if you're interested, again, this is something we can organize, just drop a comment and we'll look into this. So as you can see, in my interface there, my document has been imported in Trados, and I'm just ready to translate now. Now, the cool feature I want to talk about today, it's what's called active terminology recognition. What does that mean? That means that when you're translating a segment, if it contains a term that is available in your term base, you will have a suggestion that will be displayed. A bit similar to translation memory, if you remember the previous webinar. The difference between being, that the translation memory stores segments when the term base stores a predefined set of words, as we explained. So now I'm going to go through my first segment in the translation segment here, and we're going to start translating. So here you can see that for my first segment, there's a red line above create. That means that these terms exist in my term base. And I can also see in my term base viewer, this term create, as well as its translation for my target language, which will be French here. So great. I'm confident with the context for this segment, so I just go for it and I start translating. So now I have two ways to insert this translation. I can either click right here and insert terms translation, or what I can do is just type the first letter here, and you can see this little icon means that's coming from the term base. Press enter, and here we are. So then I just keep going, and I'm thinking, okay, there's no entry for term base, and I know that I'm going to use this term a lot, so I would like to actually add it to my term base. Okay, well then in that case, it's easy. I just type here my translation, and what I do, I highlight this one here, click Control, I highlight this one here, and then you do a click right and quick add term, and it's been added to your term base. That's that easy. Then after that, And then later on, you can add other languages if that's a multilingual, a term-based, etc. It's pretty easy, right? So after that, I'll just go to my next segment. I can see I've got a suggestion for Polaron. This is great. This term is part of my term-based because company name and therefore shouldn't be translated. And it is, as I was saying, regarded as best practice to add those terms to your term-based. I can see also that there's a suggestion for there's a suggestion for an existing translation for July. But you know what? I'm not really happy with it because the month names in French shouldn't be capitalized. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click right and choose View Term Details. And from here, it's actually, you click here to edit your entry. And I'm going to put it like this. And then I can see, I can add other languages that I have in my term base, or I'm just going to add a comment to explain why the translation is different from the source. Please note that capitalization shouldn't be used for month names in French. And we're good. It's all ready now. It's all saved in my term-based. After that, quickly translate those. So it didn't save. What? Okay, that will do for this time. It's all right. So July 2020. Great. Now I go to the next one, next segment. So that's pretty easy. Multiterm has a suggestion. That's another example of important terms to have in your term base, because product names often are terms that won't be translated. I just had multiterm here, and then I just enter my translation. I see I have a suggestion for management. It's pretty straightforward here. So I just enter my, oh, sorry. Yeah, so see, I've got first letter, press enter, and it's done. You get very much used to type fast when you have those suggestions. So we go to the next segment. Okay, we've got a few things here. I've got many suggestions. As you can see, term base here is now visible in the term recognition window when it was not, when we were translating the first segment. So it's already in your term base. So now I can translate very quickly, even though there are quite a few specific terms in this segment. So create, here I'm just going to change the spelling slightly because it's imperative tense in French. However, the suggestion still helps me. Oops, excuse me. So term base. And that's it. Done already. Now we reach the last segment. Okay, so I'm going to start translating. Sorry. And I'm just a bit surprised because there's no suggestion for entries, and that's really bizarre because I remember translating in a similar context. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click here on term-based search and search for entries. As expected, I can't find it. So I'm just thinking, what about I try the singular form? Go to entry. Ah, yes, okay, here it is. Now I find the translation a bit unusual. That's not what I would have picked in the first place, which show you the importance of having glossary. So I'm going to click here, view term details again, to see if there are any notes. Yes, but there are some notes. Hang on, I couldn't close this one. Okay. There we go. My apologies for this. Let me try again. There we go. Entry. Okay, entry is not used in its common IT meaning. Please check SDL documentation interface to translate consistently. Right, so SDL has used a specific translation for this term, which is not usual. That's why we put it in the glossary, because otherwise we would have got translation wrong and it wouldn't have matched the product from SDL if we're translating, let's say, the documentation for the product. So I'm very glad I check this translation, and now I'm just going to insert this translation because it does make sense. And then I can use, I go back to term recognition. See, I can use the translation for edit. And now you can see for any, I've got two translations here. They are not duplicates, it's intentional. You must remember that your entries in your term base are concept-based more than word-based. That means you can have several times the same word, but with different meaning every time. And so then in your suggestion window, you can decide which one is appropriate, or you can click to have more details about the definition. So in my case, it's very straightforward, so I'm not going to bother, but yeah, that's what it is here. And then that's it. We are just done with the translation. So I'm just going to stop sharing now and get back with you. So in a nutshell, those automation processes, whether it's Multiterm or any of the tool that you might use, they help you achieve faster and even more accurate and context-based translations. So I hope you have learned a few tips from this quick demo. Please feel free to ask questions at any time about this. Finally, I would like to mention that there are lots of resources on this topic available online, and I will share some links in the description section when we post a video on YouTube. Now, under certain circumstances, you may want to address the glossary in a different way. And so I'm now going to let Travis take over and talk to you about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry that you can't see my face at this point. I'm currently experiencing a few difficulties with my internet, so that is why you cannot see me. So we're going to talk about, in terms of a case study of a glossary that we did, obviously, for the current situation of COVID-19. Obviously, given the current situation surrounding the coronavirus and its overall impact on the community, we felt here at Polaron that it was only necessary that we can develop a glossary of terms and we get this done as quick as possible. I can personally say that it actually has been a huge challenge to find updates reliably, particularly when we're looking on information that's being spread on social media. So I can actually imagine what non-English speakers are going through when it comes to understanding what's actually going on. It's also important to consider the implications of some of the restrictions that are being introduced by our government. Things such as obviously mandatory face masks, which are just being introduced, as well as the closure of some non-essential businesses. These are quite significant changes when you think about it. So it's actually quite crucial that we convey these messages accurately so that all members of these communities can actually comprehend what's going on and they can actually comply appropriately. With the circumstances now evaluated, I think it was very evident that we needed to be able to offer a list of topic-specific terms, perhaps, that would translate effectively and be applicable to all education levels, of course. So what happens then is our team of language experts then started to research a number of different articles and reports. This is spanning across social media, things like news outlets, and scientific organizations. So we could identify the most commonly used terminology in relation to COVID-19 information. This was then incorporated into a bilingual template style format, similar to what Marie has just shown you, which was then used to reach out to our translators and community experts to brainstorm the translations of this terminology. Given the increasing spread of COVID-19 as well, as I've reiterated before, it was very crucial and vital that we get these resources completed as soon as possible. Once we'd actually finalized all of the languages as quickly as we could, we made them available on our website and we use them still actively when completing projects today. These glossaries also act as an extremely useful tool to not only vendors like yourselves, but also our clients when it comes to preparing information on coronavirus or other topics of that nature. For our vendors, obviously you guys, they're able to actually utilize those pre-selected terms that we've spoken about that have actually already been translated and deemed appropriate for a specific community, which will actually be aided in ensuring the overall quality of a translation. For a different perspective, our clients, they'll actually be able to easily identify specific terminology. They'll actually disseminate well for a specific language or community. And what they can do is they can include such terms when when actually generating collateral for that specific information, it actually can be more targeted to the audience that they're wishing to receive. This also actually greatly improves, again, the efficiency of a translations project with the inclusion of these already translatable phrases, which I keep mentioning, and helps achieving an overall consistency throughout all of the resources. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to pass you on to Gabi, who's going to go through a bit of her experience with glossaries and how it sort of changed over the different time periods.
Thank you, Travis. I would like to add something else. If you guys want to have a look at the glossary of terms we have developed for COVID-19, you can always check our website. It's on the knowledge base for language services, and you can have a look at all the glossary that we have developed for each of the languages. So continuing with our presentation, so last but not least, I would like to present or introduce Gabi or Gabriela. She's one of our translators for Spanish. Thank you, Gabi, for joining us again. And what I would like to do is to share your experience somehow, or for you to share your experience. And we have collected a few questions from your colleagues about the use of multilingual glossary of terms, and particularly the Multitime. So Gabi, tell us a little bit more about your experience working with the Multitime and with the multilingual glossary of terms.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Hi, everyone. Well, personally, I've been working with Trados and Multiterm for many years now. And I must say that at the very beginning, I used my TM as a glossary. However, when I started using Multiterm, I noticed that the software has many useful features. Some of them were introduced already by Marie. For me, it works like this. For instance, if I have included a term in my Multiterm glossary, this means that I have researched the word, that I have used it, and it has already been approved. So that speeds up the process in translation, as I don't have to look up for the word again, or I have to check whether I have translated this for a particular project or client. As it also appears automatically just by pressing enter in the keyboard, the whole process is speeded up. As regards to multilingual glossary, I find it useful because you can cross-check with, or you can cross-check terminology. Sometimes you don't fully know the context or the usage, so you can refer to other languages and see what you are using is correct. Also, for translators that don't use Multiterm, the database can be converted into Excel, so that is a nice feature as well.
All right. And what differs between a glossary made a decade ago as opposed to today?
Interesting. Well, many years ago, I worked with Polaron on a glossary related to aged care, which I still use. Since then, we have also prepared different glossaries, and we rely on glossaries, terminology, reference material, dictionaries. As you may know, languages change all the time. So, for instance, the usage of some of the terms in that specific glossary has changed. As translators, we need to be more careful about the way we refer to people. We need to use broader terms and try to make, not to make any difference regarding gender. So for instance, the word nurse in English is short. It doesn't refer to any gender. There's no problem. However, in Spanish, there is a word for a female nurse and another one for a male nurse. So depending on the pertinent article and termination. Therefore, the sentence becomes longer because we need both of them. So that is why nowadays we try to use the equivalent to nursing staff. So it is gender neutral. This is an important movement in the Spanish language, and linguists, translators, users, we are still trying to agree on it. Also, at that time, when we were talking to when we were referring to an elder person, it was politically correct to use the equivalent to third age. Currently, we are not using that anymore, and we are trying to use older adults, or the equivalent, of course. So these changes need to be reflected in the glossary, in the terminology that we use, and in the way we address to people in general. So I guess as a concept, we will need to use broader terms when translated, which is quite challenging. Spanish is spoken in many different countries, and we have differences as well. So the broader the term, the better, and that needs to be reflected in the glossary as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gabi. I might miss one question there. So in terms of the benefits and drawbacks to each time setting and the effects on glossaries.
Yes, I think that more or less I've replied to that. So yeah, there are many benefits of having glossaries. And actually, Polaron does a very good job in keeping glossaries for the clients or in preparing glossaries for the clients. An example could be the cancer glossary that we prepared, the diabetes one. For those glossaries, as far as I can remember, we use Excel. But yeah, again, in my case, if I have them in my database, that is the reference. I don't need the Excel file anymore. So yeah, that's it.
All right, perfect. And can you give us an example of a project that you worked on that involved the use of multiterm of glossaries?
Yes, well, as I've said, we prepared different glossaries with Polaron, and it's interesting because we can have sometimes discussions with other, in my case, Spanish speakers. So for instance, I'm from Argentina, so the way that I speak in Argentina probably is different to Chile. So yeah, it's an interesting process. And as I've said, it's good to have other terms when you are working on a project.
All right, and the benefits of using a glossary as opposed to straight translations?
Yeah. Well, in my experience, glossaries are useful for translators and checkers. For the translator, it makes their life easier because you don't need to repeat the search. For the checker, it's important because they can refer to the glossary before making any changes. So the translator should have already done that research. So the checker needs to have the glossary handling while they are doing their part of the project. Sometimes the speed at which we need to provide the translation doesn't let us prepare the glossary beforehand. And on the contrary, actually, I find it very useful to prepare it during the translation process and afterwards.
Thank you. And finally,
yes.
Finally, if you can share some tips to help your colleagues, to get started on this, on glossary of terms.
My tips could be like, read the whole text first, if you have time, and try to understand what they are referring to. And that's the reason why I personally prefer to do or to prepare the glossary while I'm translating, because sometimes for me, or as Marie has said, the word entry has a meaning, but when I'm translating, it has another meaning. So I think it's important to develop the glossary while you are doing it. Put some notes on some preferences. Sometimes you can use that word for one client and you cannot use it for another client. That would be another tip. And actually, I would like to say something about what Travis has said regarding the COVID glossary. I think it's a very important material. In that aspect, in particular, it's very new. And there are many, many different terms that are being used within the COVID pandemics. So some of them are new, and the way we are using them is new as well. So in that case, I think it's very, very useful, so we can have consistency throughout the translations, or maybe the communities need to know, okay, they are talking about this in the newspaper. Well, what's the equivalent in our languages? For instance, the way or the article that we use for COVID is different for what some people may think for coronavirus, or the translation of PCR, super spreader. So I think it's very important to have the glossary, and we can have consistency throughout the text, the different texts that we use.
Thank you very much, Gabi, for sharing your knowledge with us. And now I would like to hand it over to Travis, who is going to give us a summary of today's webinar.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I hope everyone's sort of taken away a few things from this webinar. A few points that I just wanted to bring up quickly is that just how glossaries are, they're already and will continue to be a big part of the future of translations. Obviously, in the current climate that we're working in, obviously a lot of people are working from home, and we're sort of being forced to adapt to stuff digitally. It's no surprise that we're going to be having to be moving towards a huge digital age. And I think it's important when it comes to the consistency and quality of translations that we can sort of be proactive and maybe start getting on board with these new sort of strategies that we're using, rather than maybe being reactive in the next couple of years when it might be a bit difficult to jump on board. Using them in your day-to-day will increase your marketability. This is a huge thing that we speak about in all of our webinars in the past. Obviously, adding these different skill sets, like the design stuff that we spoke about a few weeks ago, as well as the multi-term and trados implications. These are going to, adding these to your repertoire, it's not going to hurt you, and it's going to make you look a lot more appealing to potential clients, especially here at Polaron. It's also obviously a no-brainer. It's going to improve your efficiency and the overall quality of your translations projects. This doesn't take into the account that you will obviously still have to check your translations. This is not going to be implemented as a one-stop shop. This will not do everything for you, but is mainly there to assist you and guide you to a better translation. And finally, something that I'm sure I've said many times and that all of you love to hear, it's going to lead to more work. I can't do the justice of underlining, bolding that, or italicing that anymore if I could, because I'm sure everyone really wants to get more work. But if you do introduce these processes, you're not only going to make your PMs a life lot easier, you're going to see a huge difference when it comes to clients' responses. There's not going to be too much intensified feedback when it comes to your translations, and you're going to get an overall much better review of your final project. So I believe we're going to start answering some questions now.
Yes, thank you, Travis. So we have a few questions in the chat, and also we receive a few questions from Facebook because we're also live streaming on Facebook. If I may just jump on the questions, guys. The first one is related to the software itself. So the name of the software, if we can just remind our audience the name of the software, and if it's, can they download it for free, and how can they download it?
I can answer this question. So the software name is Multiterm, and it's actually, you can find it on SDL webpage. And if you have license to Trados, you can use the same license to Multiterm. But yeah, it's not free software. So you need actually to buy a license, and it's the same as for Trados.
Okay,
just quickly, just quickly, that's also gonna, just going back into investing in yourselves and just reiterating that marketability stuff. Obviously, investing in something like Trados or something like Multiterm, whatever software you particularly choose to use, it's definitely not going to hinder the quality of your work.
Thank you. The next question will be, so this kind of software focuses on standardization and consistency with the purpose of recycling. Does this not kill creativity in applying context, content, and intent in any TNI setting? Maybe Marie can cover that.
Sure. Thank you, Andrea. Listen, thank you for your questions. They are very interesting questions, and yeah, I would like to try and reply to you. So when you said that these kinds of software focus on consistency and standardization, actually, we're not talking about software here. We're talking about workflow more. We get the example of Multiterm, but it can be done, as you saw in our example, just in a very simple table. You don't have to go through a software to use Glossary. Consistency, I believe, is never negative when it comes to translation. Does it kill the creativity in applying context, content, and intent? Well, the intent will be driven by the style guide, right? So we really depend on the client you're working for, and you may have more or less room for creativity depending on who you're translating for. As for the context and the content, well, that's the purpose of having such tools, because they are context related, as I was explaining earlier on. They're based on a very specific context. And we know for us translators how important that is. This is where we make a difference to, let's say, compared to machine translation. So that actually helps you to fit your context more. So I don't believe that would kill your creativity at all. It just gives you more tools to actually play with your creativity.
Thank you, Marie. So I want to bring in a question that we received from Facebook related to the resource itself and downloading the resource. Perhaps Gata knows, are there any free resources for creating multilingual glossaries? So we know that, for example, they can create it using a simple spreadsheet on Excel. Mm-hmm. Have you used any? Maybe Gabi can help. So have you used any other software, Gabi?
There you go. To be honest, I've been using Trados mainly. That's my main software, and I've been using it for more than 20 years, a bit more. And I've always used Multitime or Excel files. I haven't used any other one.
Agata or Marie, want to add something?
Yeah, so there is actually a few other tools like MemoQ or SmartCut, I think. But yeah, it really depends what you prefer to use. And actually, we're talking about Trados and Multiterm as they are quite popular ones. But yeah, it really depends if you're using something else and that works for you, that's perfectly fine.
All right, if there's yes, we receive another one. Is this Polaron glossaries available to access by translators and checkers?
So
maybe, yes.
So if we have a glossary that was created with client or like any other reference notes, we sending this to checkers. But yeah, sometimes it's really work in progress, because at the beginning we don't have a glossary, and sometimes when we like creating updates, we can like share more information with checkers and proofreaders. And I would also like to answer one more question. Someone asked, who is the authority to verify and validate the terms? So yeah, actually it's like the translator responsibility for the translation, but we're doing our best to like have another checker to proofread the text. We're also asking community leaders. Yeah, it really depends also which product was chosen by our client, because sometimes they going with community approved translation, sometimes with just standard translation. And sometimes they also have their like bilingual workers. For example, diabetes have their own bilingual checkers who also like giving suggestions regarding sometimes it's really stylistic. For example, they don't want to use negative language. So you actually may say that you shouldn't say suffering for diabetes, because it's kind of negative. You can just say that someone have diabetes. And it's really like more like a stylistic thing, but if the client asking us about this, we kind of need to apply those changes in our resources.
All right, thank you so much, guys. Thank you, everyone, Agatha, Marie, Travis, and Gabi for today's webinar. You did a great job. And for everyone who joined us today, thank you for your time. If you have any other question you want to send us, feel free to reach out to any of us. So you can see the contact details in the screen. And thank you so much. We'll see you next month for the next webinar session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, guys. See you later.
Thank you.